Hey everyone. I realized after I posted the final video for the picture, I didn't talk about the handle for the picture at all, which is really a very important element. Because these are handmade objects, I do a more handmade uh, handle, so it sort of suits the form. Here's a couple that are finished, so you can sort of see. There's one. So you can sort of see there's a lot of like process marks and shortness along the side. This is just sort of how, and I like to sort of see how it's attached. So I really have to have the form sort of set up. So that's one. I have two that I've finished, and I'll make a third one for you. Here's another one. A little bit. This one's a little more gentle in the tearing, but it's kind of overlapped. You can kind of see. Bum, bum, bum. Picture. So one of the tricks to making a handle that fits an object is to sort of follow the way you made an object, right? So if I threw a mug, I'm going to pull a handle for that because that mug has a more smooth finish and needs a more smooth finished handle. And so for like a Triscuit that I make or a pitcher, I'm going to hand build a handle, okay? And I actually start them the same way like I did the other. Like I have a handle demo that I posted not that long ago. So what I do is I want clay that's kind of a little bit drier, so that it has a bit of a shortness to it. And that shortness lends itself to the sort of cracking on the edges. And I just sort of flip it over and I pinch and pinch and pinch. And I know you can't really see what my hands are doing. What I'm doing is I'm kind of pushing towards the center and creating kind of a diamond shape, right? So tapered on the ends and thicker towards the center. And what happens is it'll create a bit of the spine. And I don't really want the spine. So what I'll do is I come back and I'll kind of flatten that out. And then I will do some more pinching. And so depending on how big your handle is, also how wet your clay is, sometimes you just have to be very careful, gentle with it. So these handles I futz with quite a bit. It is not uncommon for me to fold this up and sort of do it again. I'll also lean it against my pitcher. That way then I have a little bit of support. So it's not uncommon that I'm going to fold this over and I'm going to do this several times until really I'm getting the right shape and the right sort of breakage along the edge. And it's really what I think is interesting. It's more intuitive than it is any kind of method to my madness kind of idea. This is really just something that I have worked out that works for me. And so I also, once I get it to about the size, I'll look at my pitcher that I'm going to put it on and sort of see how big it is. And this is actually a little big, so I'm going to take off a bit of the clay. And so then, now I've got a lopsided handle. I'm going to fold it in half and do it again. And it's funny, I didn't say this in one of my previous handle demos, but you don't ever want to be afraid to just take off a bad handle. There's nothing like a bad handle on a nice pot, and there's no getting around it. You just have to take it off and do it again. And sometimes that requires some patience and really like maybe you've scored and slipped this and it's too wet, and so you keep trying to work it and it's just not, you're damaging the pot and the form. So you just want to let it rest, let it firm back up, and then attach again. So, and then this is like just a smidge, maybe a little too, I think it's too wide. Actually, I'm going to fold it again, do it again. So, this is just to illustrate that the first time is not always the best, and you have to sort of really go with your gut and what looks good. One of the things that's really important about a handle is also the confidence with which it's attached, and then also the confidence someone has picking it up. So if you have a really spindly attachment, like what I'll see a lot in beginner handles is that at the attachment, what will happen is it'll be attached here and then there'll be these big gapes like here where it's gotten really narrow and then it thickens back up. That to me is a cracking point and also doesn't really lend itself to the user being overly confident that they're not going to break it, right? I don't know about you, but I tend to be a bit of a bull in the china shop, and I'm kind of hard on my pottery So I tend to make work that really has solid connection to it and has some sturdiness to it because it's important in the objects that I use. And so that's just a relational thing for me that it makes sense. I think one of the things you can do, okay, so this is a bit better as far as length goes, and I'm pretty close. So you can see I tend to have sort of a wider bottom and a little bit more narrow top. That's just because what happens is with this picture, you'll see, like when I attach it, I'll get this big sort of bottom underneath. And I really like to have this little sort of shelf that happens there. And I just like that firm attachment. And it basically kind of cups the back side of the pot, right? So it sort of hugs and then follows around. So, just a really quick illustration there. I just saw a weird little crease. Sorry, distracted. Okay, I'm just gonna really quick attach this. And all I'm gonna do is score, score, score. This picture is a really nice sort of soft leather hard, so it's gonna hold its shape. And then I'm gonna score underneath here. I one time had a really crazy thing happen. I was teaching a workshop at Anderson Ranch, and we were busy glazing. I had bisqueware that I basically had a pitcher and I was rinsing it out, and then I held it by the handle and I was shaking it dry, and then the pitcher flew one way and I still had the handle. So you want to make sure you score really well because it's nothing like it coming off at some point. It's ridiculous. All my students loved it, of course. Okay, so really well scored underneath. I'll score again up here just to sort of get a little bit of goo going. Okay, and so one of the things I try to do is this little area needs to have a bit of a curve in it because it's going to wrap around this, which is kind of U-shaped, right? So I really want to be able to work that around. And I don't mind, I usually tend to want to make my handles just a smidge smaller and tighter than it appears they need to be, because that allows me to then pinch it a little bit and finesse the shape on the form. So I just want to get it kind of stuck in place. And then I'm just going to put this guy, attach that. Okay, so I have a really firm attachment. You can kind of see it's a little misshapen, doesn't look super great yet. So I'm just going to sort of work this clay around this top connection point. And then I'm just going to sort of pinch this into shape a little bit more. Sort of tapering still towards the center, tightening up those outside edges and creases. Make sure my attachment is well. Just reinforcing everything and then working on the shape. And so I can make a lot of choices, right? So that to me is not a great shape at this point, especially for this form. So a lot of times what will happen is I kind of will follow this line, and I want this to sort of come down and then this to sort of follow this curve, right? And so to me, that's a more successful shape. And let's say, that's just sort of the deal. That's sort of, I think I'll leave it at that. These pictures are a little bit, these are not much. I would say in recent past, my pictures have been kind of a little bit smaller, but I tend to work in series, and so everything, these pictures are a little bit larger because I've been thinking my pictures are too small lately, and so I've made some larger pictures. And so this has a really nice kind of heft to its handle because this picture is just a little bit larger, so it'll hold a bit more water. And so that's what I'm calling good at this point. And so this is also when I'll kind of stamp my work. Yeah, that looks good. And it's always, I think, it's important to step back and look. Give yourself a little bit of distance and say, okay. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll set them all on the shelf and then line them up. And if I'm not super happy, like I'm actually not super happy with this one, but it's okay. I think it got a little too smooth in the last thing. So what I'm gonna do is actually I'm just gonna pinch it out, make it, this is crazy, sorry guys. Okay, so what's happening is it's too big. So this is something all of your teachers will tell you never to do. I do it all the time. So I basically will just cut out a section because I've made the handles a little bit too long, and I just want to tighten it up a little bit. Okay, so when I do that, I'm going to overlap these. I'm not going to butt them, right? And so in that overlapping, I'm just going to compress that together and tighten that up. So I'm a little bit happier with the sort of shape and thickness. So I took out a little bit of the thickness of the handle, tightened it up. There you go. So it's I'm happier with that now, right? And then you can see there's just a little seam there. But because this is a hand-built handle, like I've never had this cracked. If you're worried about it, you can score it. To me, this is exactly the same temperature as this, so it wants to stick together. And I've really compressed it well with my fingers. So, boom, handle, done. Okay, this will be the final video on pictures. Took a lot of videos. So, it's like a complex object and takes a lot of practice to get right. So happy picture making, guys. Have a wonderful day. Bye.